At 42 years old, Andre Collins made a comfortable living. As a senior HVAC technician in Houston, his salary was a steady $72,000 a year, enough to feel secure, enough to provide. He was a good man, a quiet man, with hands calloused from years of wrestling with compressors and ductwork. His deep brown skin seemed to hold the warmth of the Texas sun, and his neat locks were often tucked under a company baseball cap. He believed in simple things: hard work, honesty, and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. For 8 years, he believed he was building a life, an investment, a home with his wife, Rochelle. He had no idea how profoundly wrong he was. The devastating truth began to surface not with a bang, but with a quiet, cruel command uttered in the one place he thought was his. It was a Saturday afternoon, the air thick with the promise of a humid Houston summer. Andre was in the kitchen, the heart of the single-story bungalow in Alif they all shared. He had laid out the ingredients for his special gumbo, a recipe passed down from his father. The holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell pepper was already diced, a colorful mound on his $80 bamboo cutting board. He'd spent over $120 at the local H-E-B on fresh Gulf shrimp, andouille sausage, and all the necessary spices. The kitchen was his pride, mostly because he had personally outfitted it. The gleaming $2,000 Samsung smart fridge hummed quietly, a testament to his good credit. He was stirring a roux in a heavy-bottomed pot on the $3,200 Wolf gas range he'd installed as a 5th anniversary present to Rochelle, a luxury she'd coveted. The smell of toasting flour and butter was just beginning to fill the air. That's when Gloria, his mother-in-law, walked in. Gloria was a woman who carried herself with an air of regal ownership. Her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her nails always manicured. She surveyed the scene, her eyes landing on Andre at her expensive stove. A frown creased her smooth, light brown face. "Andre, what are you doing?" Her voice was not curious, it was accusatory. He smiled, not yet sensing the chill descending upon the room. "Making my gumbo, Gloria. Thought we could have a nice family dinner." Gloria walked over and peered into the pot, her nose wrinkled as if she smelled something foul. "This is a mess." She waved a dismissive hand, the diamonds on her $3,000 anniversary ring catching the light. "And this is my kitchen." She turned to face him, her expression one of utter condescension. "You pay the bills, Andre. That's your role. You don't belong in here, making a mess of my things. Get out." The words hung in the air sharper than any knife. Get out. Not let me help, not maybe later. Just a cold, hard dismissal. Andre stood frozen, the wooden spoon suspended over the pot. He felt the blood drain from his face. At that moment, Rochelle drifted in, drawn by the voices. She was wearing a new $400 silk lounge set Andre's credit card had paid for last week. She saw her husband's stunned face and her mother's imperious stance. "What's going on?" Rochelle asked, her voice light. "I've told Andre to leave the kitchen," Gloria said, not taking her eyes off him. "He can order a pizza if he's hungry. He's good at paying for things." Andre looked at his wife, searching for an ally, for a single word of defense. He found none. Rochelle gave a little placating laugh and touched his arm. "Mama's right, honey. You know how she is about her kitchen. Let's not make a fuss. We can just order from Frenchie's. Come on." She was siding with her. She was validating the insult. In that moment, Andre wasn't a husband or a partner. He was a service provider, an ATM, a guest who had overstepped his bounds. He looked from his wife's averted eyes to his mother-in-law's triumphant smirk. Without a word, he turned off the burner. He carefully placed the spoon on the counter, took off the apron he was wearing, and folded it. He scraped the $100 worth of chopped vegetables into the trash. He put the lid on the pot of useless, half-cooked roux. He did it all with a slow, deliberate calmness that was more terrifying than any shouting match could have been. He washed his hands, dried them, and walked out of the kitchen, the echo of Gloria's words carving a canyon in his soul. "You pay bills, Andre. You don't belong here." He went into the backyard and sat on the steps of the patio he had built with his own two hands, a project that had cost him $1,500 in materials and 3 full weekends of labor. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn he mowed every Saturday. He had never felt so utterly alone in a place so full of his own sweat and money. He had paid for this house, but he did not belong in its kitchen. The injustice of it settled deep in his bones, a cold, heavy stone, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the core that this could not continue. What he didn't know was that the foundation of his entire life was a lie, and the proof was waiting for him, stuck to the door of a refrigerator he had bought and paid for. Have you ever poured your heart and soul into something, only to be told you don't belong? It's a feeling that hollows you out, and for Andre, this was just the beginning. Stick with us to see how a man who was treated like a walking wallet finally decided to close the bank. The arrangement had started 8 years ago, born out of a crisis, and presented as an opportunity. Gloria, recently widowed, was on the verge of losing her home in Alief. The mortgage on the 3-bedroom bungalow, a modest brick house on a quiet street, was more than her widow's pension could handle. The original loan was for $180,000, and she still owed a considerable amount. Rochelle had come to Andre with tears in her eyes, her face a mask of loving concern for her mother. They were sitting in their small, cramped apartment at the time, a place that cost them $1,300 a month in rent. "My mama is going to be homeless, Andre," she'd said, her voice thick with emotion. "She's worked her whole life for that house. It's all she has left of my daddy." Andre, a man whose entire life was built on the principle of fixing things, immediately wanted to help. "What can we do, baby? We can give her some money each month." Rochelle had a bigger idea. "No, it's more than that. She needs a permanent solution." She took his hands in hers. "What if we moved in with her? We could take over the mortgage payment. It's $1,450 a month. That's barely more than our rent here. We'd have a whole house, a yard, and instead of throwing money away on rent, we'd be building equity. It would be our house, Andre, our family home, our biggest investment." It sounded perfect. It sounded responsible. He would be rescuing his mother-in-law, providing a beautiful home for his wife, and investing in their future all at once. It was the ultimate act of service and stability. A proud, solid black man, providing for his family. "Are you sure?" he'd asked. "Gloria is okay with that?" "She'd be thrilled," Rochelle had assured him. "It's the only way she can keep it. We'll be a family, all under one roof." They even signed a small, informal document Rochelle had typed up. It was a single page, stating that Andre Collins agreed to have the monthly mortgage payment of $1,450 automatically debited from his Chase checking account for the property at 7418 Holly Hall Street, in consideration of it being their shared family home and joint investment. He signed it without a second thought. It felt official, a promise between him and his wife. It was his first and most critical mistake. The first year was a blur of activity. Andre moved them out of the apartment, saving the $1,300 monthly rent. He set up the automatic payment from his account directly to the Wells Fargo mortgage. The first draft felt momentous, a real step toward ownership. He immediately got to work making the house a home. The central air conditioning unit was old and inefficient. As an HVAC professional, he couldn't stand it. He got a brand new, top-of-the-line $4,500 train unit at his wholesale cost and spent an entire weekend installing it himself, saving them at least $3,000 in labor. Gloria and Rochelle had praised him effusively, bringing him lemonade while he worked in the blistering Houston heat. He painted the living room, a soft gray Rochelle had picked out. He replaced all the old corroded faucets in the bathrooms with shiny new Moen fixtures, a $400 expense. He bought a new lawnmower, a $350 Craftsman, and took pride in keeping the St. Augustine grass thick and green. The house was his project, his canvas. Every paycheck went toward its upkeep and improvement. His $72,000 salary was stretched between the $1,450 mortgage, the utility bills which were now in his name, the car payment on his $35,000 Ford F-150, and the constant stream of household needs. Rochelle and Gloria, meanwhile, settled into a life of comfort. With the housing cost covered, Rochelle's $41,000 salary as a receptionist was almost entirely disposable income. She bought new clothes from Macy's and Dillard's, her closet filling with brands like Michael Kors and Coach. Her shoe collection alone was worth more than Andre's entire tool set, which he relied on to make his living. His $80 Red Wing work boots stood in stark contrast to her rows of $600 Stuart Weitzman heels. Gloria, her financial worries erased, spent her days gardening and hosting her friends from church for long lunches. They would sit on the patio furniture Andre had assembled, drinking iced tea and admiring the rose bushes Gloria tended. Andre was often at work during these gatherings, but when he was home, he felt like staff. Gloria would ask him to fetch things, to check the air conditioning, to take out the trash, always with a polite but firm tone that set him apart from the guests. He was the handyman, the groundskeeper, the financial backbone, but he was not one of them. He tried to ignore the feeling. He told himself it was just Gloria's way. He was a simple man, and she was a proud woman. He was providing. That was his role, and he took pride in it. But the small slights began to accumulate, like stones in his pocket, weighing him down bit by bit. The small slights soon grew into larger, more painful moments of exclusion, each one a crack in the facade of their happy family. The betrayal wasn't a single event, but a slow, creeping erosion of his dignity, a death by 1,000 cuts. The outrage accumulated in the quiet corners of his heart, a pressure building with no release valve. The first major crack appeared during a family barbecue, about 2 years into the arrangement. Andre was at the helm of the $800 Weber grill he'd bought for the backyard, flipping burgers and hot dogs. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and the upbeat rhythm of a gospel station playing softly from a portable speaker. Rochelle's cousins, aunts, and uncles were scattered across the lawn, enjoying the beautiful Saturday afternoon. Andre felt a swell of pride. This was the life he was building, a home filled with family, good food, and joy. One of Rochelle's cousins, a loud talker named Marcus, came over to the grill, grabbing a beer from the cooler. "Man, this is a nice setup you got here, Andre," he said, clapping him on the back. "You're living good. What's it like living in Auntie Gloria's house? She keeps it nice." The question was casual, innocent. But the phrasing, Gloria's house, prickled at Andre. He forced a smile. "It's our house, man. We all live here." Rochelle, who was nearby talking to her aunt, overheard. She quickly glided over, her smile bright and brittle. "Oh, Marcus, you know Andre, always joking," she said, looping her arm through Andre's. "He's just so grateful Mama lets us stay here. We're so blessed." She squeezed his arm, a silent command to play along. The whole group chuckled. "That's right, you better be grateful," one aunt chimed in. "Gloria's a generous woman." Andre felt the heat from the grill on his face, but a different kind of heat was rising inside him. He wanted to correct them, to say, "I pay the mortgage. every single dime. This is my house as much as it is hers." But he looked at Rochelle's smiling, insistent face, and the words died in his throat. He didn't want to cause a scene, to ruin the party. So he just nodded, flipped a burger with a little too much force, and said nothing. The laughter continued, but for Andre the joy of the day had vanished. He was a tenant in their eyes, a long-term guest, fortunate to be allowed in the home he was single-handedly paying for. The feeling of being an outsider in his own home intensified over the years. Christmas was always a stark reminder. One year, he decided to surprise the family with a major upgrade to the living room. He spent weeks researching and finally used his Christmas bonus to buy a massive 75-inch Sony television for $1,800. He mounted it on the wall himself, hiding the wires for a clean, professional look. He imagined them all gathered around it, watching holiday movies. When Rochelle and Gloria saw it, they were certainly surprised. "Oh, Andre, it's huge," Rochelle said, her eyes wide. Gloria offered a polite, thin-lipped smile. "Thank you, Andre. That was very thoughtful of you." Later that evening, he was in the hallway when he overheard Gloria talking to Rochelle in the kitchen, their voices low. "It's just too big for the space, don't you think?" Gloria said, her voice laced with disapproval. "It's a bit ostentatious. It makes the whole room look smaller." "I know, Mama," Rochelle whispered back, "but he was so excited about it. We'll just have to get used to it." Andre stood in the shadows of the hall, the brand-new television casting a brilliant, mocking light into the living room. It wasn't a gift to the family. It was an imposition. It was his taste, his choice, and therefore it was wrong. He felt a familiar, sinking feeling. His contributions were not seen as investments in a shared life, but as temporary additions to Gloria's house, to be tolerated, but not truly embraced. He was decorating a home that would never really be his. The financial lines, once presented as so clear, became increasingly blurred and weaponized against him. Rochelle's spending habits grew more extravagant. One spring, she and Gloria became obsessed with the idea of a 7-day Caribbean cruise. The brochures were left open on the coffee table. The cost for the two of them, for a balcony suite, was just over $5,000. "We should book it, honey," Rochelle said one evening, snuggling up to him on the sofa. Andre was tired. He'd just finished a grueling week, crawling through stifling attics and dusty crawl spaces. He'd been putting in overtime to save up for a new set of diagnostic tools that would cost him nearly $1,200. "A cruise?" "Rochelle, I don't think we can swing that right now. $5,000 is a lot of money." Her face fell. She pulled away, her expression shifting from affection to annoyance. "What are you talking about? You make good money, Andre. What's the point of you working so hard if we can't enjoy it?" "We do enjoy it," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "We have this house. We have everything we need. The mortgage, the bills. It all adds up." And then she said it. The words that struck him like a slap. "But we live rent-free. That was the whole point of moving in here. All that money we save should be for us to have fun. Rent-free." The phrase hung in the air between them, ugly and sharp. "It's not rent-free, Rochelle," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I pay a mortgage. We are supposed to be building equity. It's an investment, remember?" She threw her hands up in exasperation. "Oh, it's the same thing. Mortgage, rent, whatever. It's a bill you pay so we can live here. Why are you being so difficult about this? My mother and I deserve a vacation. You're not even coming. So, what do you care?" He had no answer for that. The conversation was over. She was telling him that his money was for her and her mother's enjoyment, and his opinion on how it was spent was irrelevant. His role was simply to generate the funds. They ended up taking the cruise. Andre saw the $5,230 charge on his Capital One card, which he had been slowly trying to pay down. He worked 2 weekends in a row to cover the extra cost, the exhaustion settling into his bones like a deep chill. All these moments, all these humiliations, were leading to one place. They were the kindling, the dry tinder, waiting for a spark. And that spark came on that fateful Saturday afternoon in the kitchen. The gumbo incident was not the start of the problem. It was the culmination of 8 years of being diminished, disrespected, and devalued. When Gloria said, "Get out of my kitchen," she wasn't just talking about the room. She was articulating the unspoken truth of their entire arrangement. This was her house. This was her space. He was the financial engine that kept it running, but he was not a part of the machine. He was the fuel, meant to be burned up and consumed without complaint. As he sat on the back steps that evening, the smell of his wasted ingredients still lingering in the air, he replayed the scene in his mind. He saw Rochelle's easy dismissal of his hurt, her quick alignment with her mother. For 8 years, he had told himself he was the patriarch of this family, the provider, the protector. But the truth was, he was just a tenant with a very expensive, very unfair lease. He was a fool. The rage that had been slowly building for years finally cooled into something else entirely. It became a cold, hard resolve. Something had to change. He just didn't realize how deep the deception went, or how swift and silent his response would be once he found out. He was about to discover the full scope of their betrayal, and they had no idea what was coming. Do you think they deserved what was coming to them? Let us know in the comments. The way Andre handled this situation is something you won't want to miss. The days following the kitchen incident were cloaked in a tense, artificial peace. Andre moved through the house like a ghost, his presence physical, but his spirit absent. He was polite, detached, an actor playing the part of a husband. Rochelle and Gloria seemed to take his silence as contrition, as if he had accepted his place. They had no idea it was the calm before a storm that would tear their comfortable world apart. The discovery of the full, calculated betrayal happened on a Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m. Andre had woken up early, the house still dark and silent. He couldn't sleep. The scene in the kitchen played on a loop in his mind. He walked into the kitchen where he'd been so thoroughly dismissed, the same room that held the gleaming $2,000 Samsung refrigerator he'd been so proud of. He opened the freezer to get some ice for a glass of water, and his eyes caught on a piece of mail stuck to the door with a cheap plastic strawberry magnet. It was an official-looking envelope from Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, the window showing the return address. It was slightly crumpled, and the flap was torn open. It wasn't the usual monthly statement. This one had bold red letters visible through the window. Past due notice. Curiosity, sharp and cold, cut through his emotional fog. The mortgage payment was on autopay. It had never been late in 8 years. He gently pulled the magnet off the door, the paper cool against his fingertips. He slid the single sheet out of the envelope. His eyes scanned the document under the dim under-cabinet lighting he had installed himself. It was a notice that the recent mortgage payment had been declined due to insufficient funds or a closed account. He hadn't checked the old account since Rochelle had taken the cruise. But that wasn't what made his blood run cold. He looked at the top of the page, at the section detailing the borrower information. He read the name listed there. Borrower, Gloria Sinclair. He read it again and again. There was only one name, not Gloria Sinclair and Rochelle Collins, not Gloria Sinclair and Andre Collins, just Gloria Sinclair. His breath caught in his chest. For 8 years, he had believed he was paying into a shared asset. For 8 years, Rochelle had called it our investment. He thought his name was on the deed, or that it would be added, or that his payments were legally establishing his equity. He was wrong. According to this official bank document, he had no legal connection to the property whatsoever. He was just a man paying a woman's mother's mortgage. Then he saw the final damning piece of evidence. At the bottom of the page, next to the amount due $1,450, someone had scribbled a note in pen. The handwriting was Rochelle's, loopy and familiar. It was a string of numbers. He recognized them instantly. It was his Chase checking account number, the one he had given her 8 years ago to set up the shared payment. She had written it there as a reference, a reminder of which account to bill, which well to draw from. The truth crashed down on him with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an oversight. This was a deliberate, calculated, long-term deception. Rochelle had never intended for this to be his house. She had knowingly funneled his money, a direct pipeline from his paycheck to her mother's debt, while allowing him to believe he was building a future for them both. The informal agreement she'd had him sign was a worthless piece of paper, a prop to sell him on the fantasy. He stood there in the silent kitchen, the house sleeping around him, and did the math. $1,450 a month for 96 months, 8 full years. He had paid $139,200. $139,200 of his hard-earned money, paid on a house that wasn't his, in which he was told to get out of the kitchen. The money he could have used for a down payment on his own property. The money he could have invested. The money he could have saved. It was all gone, poured into Gloria's asset while his own net worth remained stagnant. The rage he expected to feel didn't come. In its place was a profound, terrifying emptiness. He felt hollowed out, scoured clean of any love or loyalty he had ever felt for Rochelle. He saw her now with perfect, horrifying clarity. She didn't see him as a partner. She saw him as a resource, a tool. With hands that were surprisingly steady, he pulled out his phone. It was an older model iPhone, not the latest $1,200 version Rochelle had. He opened the camera and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the mortgage notice, making sure the borrower's name and Rochelle's handwritten note with his account number were perfectly legible. The flash was startling in the dim light. He took another one, just to be sure. Then he carefully slid the paper back into its envelope. He placed it back on the refrigerator door, positioning the strawberry magnet in the exact same spot. He made it look untouched, undisturbed. He took his glass of water, drank it down, and placed the empty glass in the sink. He went back to the bedroom, where Rochelle was still sleeping soundly, and got ready for work. He put on his $80 work boots, his uniform, and grabbed his keys. As he walked out the door into the cool morning air, he was a different man than the one who had walked in the night before. The illusion was shattered. The facade had crumbled. Now all that was left was the cold, hard truth and the question of what he was going to do about it. And Andre Collins was, above all else, a man of action. They just never saw it coming. The discovery of the mortgage notice didn't ignite an explosion. It started a slow, controlled burn inside Andre. Confrontation would give them a chance to lie, to cry, to manipulate. He had seen Rochelle do it 100 times. This time would be different. This time, he would not play their game. He would create his own. The period after his discovery was an exercise in supreme self-control, a masterclass in playing dumb, while his mind worked with the cold precision of a surgeon. That Tuesday evening, he walked back into the house on Holly Hall Street, every fiber of his being screaming at him to turn around and never come back. But he pushed the feeling down. He had a role to play. He found Rochelle and Gloria in the living room, watching the giant Sony TV he'd bought. The one Gloria found so ostentatious. Rochelle looked up and smiled, a bright, oblivious smile. "Hey, honey, long day." "Yeah, a tough one," he said, his voice even. It wasn't a lie. "Climbed in 3 attics over 140 degrees. "Well, you're just in time," Gloria announced from her armchair, not taking her eyes off the screen. "I made pot roast." He was being offered dinner in the house he paid for, cooked by the woman who had banished him from the kitchen. The irony was so thick he could taste it. He went to the dinner table and sat down. Rochelle served him a plate. He ate the food piece by piece. He complimented Gloria on the meal. "This is delicious, Gloria, thank you," he said, looking her directly in the eye. She gave a satisfied nod. "Well, at least someone appreciates my cooking." The barb was meant for him, a callback to his failed gumbo attempt. A week ago, it would have stung. Now it felt like nothing. It was a gnat buzzing around his head. He was observing them from a great distance, like a scientist studying specimens under a microscope. He saw the casual entitlement, the deep-seated belief that his purpose was to serve their comfort. He listened to them talk about their day. Rochelle's office gossip, Gloria's plans for her garden. He nodded and made appropriate responses. He was a perfect phantom, a shell of the man they thought they knew. Inside, he was dismantling the life they had built on his back, brick by brick. The next day, he put the first part of his plan into motion. He needed time and space to operate without suspicion. "Hey, baby," he said to Rochelle that night, "I just got a call. We landed a big commercial contract out in Katy. A whole office building needs a new system. It's going to be a lot of overtime for the next couple of weeks. I'll probably be getting home really late." Her eyes lit up, not with sympathy for his long hours, but with greed. "Oh, that's wonderful, Andre. A big contract means a big paycheck, right?" "That's the idea," he said. "Don't work yourself too hard," she said, the concern in her voice thin and unconvincing. What she meant was, don't stop making money. This lie gave him the cover he needed. He wasn't working late in Katy. He was methodically preparing his exit. He started small. He began quietly removing his most personal and irreplaceable items from the house. One evening, under the guise of cleaning out the garage, he packed a single, sturdy box. In it went a small collection of vinyl records that had belonged to his father, old soul and blues albums from the 70s. He added his father's old Omega watch, a piece that didn't work but held immense sentimental value. He packed a few worn paperbacks he'd read a dozen times. He loaded the box into the bed of his Ford F-150 under a tarp. When he came back inside, Rochelle was on the phone, laughing with a friend. She hadn't even noticed he was gone. The next day, during his late night at work, he drove the box to a public storage unit he had rented online for $59 a month. It was a small 5x5 unit, just enough for the essentials. Over the next week, he made several more trips. He took his good work tools, his $1,500 Makita combo kit that he normally kept in the garage. He told Rochelle he was taking them to the job site so he wouldn't have to haul them back and forth. She just nodded, uninterested in the details of his labor. He packed his winter clothes, his high school yearbooks, and a framed photo of his parents. Each item removed from the house was a cord being cut, a silent step toward freedom. He felt a strange, cold power in his deception. He was moving in plain sight, and they were so consumed with their own lives, so assured of his docile compliance, that they saw nothing. One evening, Gloria even asked him to move a heavy box of her old Christmas decorations in the garage. He did it without complaint, walking right past the empty space where his own boxes used to be. The dramatic irony was a secret, bitter pleasure. They had made him feel invisible for years, and now he was using that invisibility as a weapon. He was becoming a ghost in his own life, preparing to haunt them with his absence. And the most important part of his plan was yet to come, seeking professional help to turn their years of deception into their greatest liability. With his most valuable personal effects secured and his alibi established, Andre moved to the next phase of his plan, transforming his quiet suffering into a rock-solid legal case. His late nights working on the fictitious commercial job in Katy were actually spent in the sterile quiet of the Harris County Law Library, using their public computers to research attorneys. He wasn't looking for a bulldog or a shark. He was looking for someone smart, methodical, and precise. Someone who would understand the cold, calculated nature of the betrayal and how to dismantle it with facts, not fury. He found her on a Thursday evening, Ms. Dina Vance, a black woman in her late 40s, a graduate of Howard University School of Law, with a boutique practice in a gleaming glass tower in Greenway Plaza. Her website specialized in family law and financial disputes, with testimonials praising her calm demeanor and sharp legal mind. She was exactly what he needed. Her consultation fee was listed at $550 an hour, a steep price that made him flinch, but he knew this was an investment in his future, the most important one he would ever make. He called her office the next morning from the cab of his truck, parked in a quiet corner of a Home Depot parking lot. He spoke to a paralegal, his voice low and steady, and booked a consultation for the following Monday at 4 p.m. He spent the entire weekend preparing. He logged into his Chase online banking portal and, with a grim sense of purpose, began the tedious process of downloading and printing every single bank statement for the last 8 years. 96 statements in total. He used the printer at a FedEx office, the bill coming to $48.50, another receipt he carefully saved. He went through each statement with a yellow highlighter, marking the recurring $1,450 automatic withdrawal to Wells Fargo Home MTG. The line of yellow marks formed an unbroken chain of financial servitude. He also had the photo of the past due notice, which he printed in high-resolution color. And finally, he found the original agreement Rochelle had typed up, tucked away in an old file box. He smoothed out the creases, seeing her signature next to his, under the words shared family home and joint investment, felt like touching a hot stove. It was the centerpiece of the lie. On Monday afternoon, Andre left his last job site early, telling his dispatcher he had a doctor's appointment. He changed out of his dusty work uniform into a clean pair of khaki pants and a simple, pressed polo shirt, clothes he kept in a gym bag in his truck. He drove his F-150 into the soaring concrete parking garage of the Greenway Plaza Tower. The oversized truck looking out of place next to the rows of expensive sedans and luxury SUVs, the BMWs and Mercedes that cost more than his annual salary. Ms. Vance's office was on the 22nd floor. The view of the city was breathtaking, but Andre barely noticed. He sat in the plush waiting room, his heart pounding a steady, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He clutched a worn leather portfolio containing his evidence. Ms. Vance was even more impressive in person. She was tall and elegant, with intricate braids coiled into a graceful bun. Her eyes were intelligent and missed nothing. She greeted him with a firm handshake and led him into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Mr. Collins," she said, her voice calm and professional. "Thank you for coming in. Please tell me what's going on." For the next 30 minutes, Andre laid out the story. He spoke without emotion, presenting the facts as he knew them. The promise of a shared investment, the 8 years of payments, the informal agreement, the constant dismissal and disrespect, the kitchen incident, and finally, the discovery of the mortgage notice. He slid the documents across the polished mahogany table, the stack of highlighted bank statements, the color printout of the notice with Rochelle's handwritten note, in mesh one handwritten, and the signed agreement. Ms. Vance listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. She picked up the photo of the notice and studied it closely. Then she looked at the informal agreement. Finally, she began to flip through the bank statements one by one. The only sound in the room was the soft rustle of paper. After several long minutes, she placed the papers back into a neat pile and looked directly at Andre. Her calm demeanor had shifted. There was a new hardness in her eyes, a glint of steel. "Mr. Collins," she said, her voice low and firm, "this is not just a family dispute. Based on these documents, this is a textbook case of financial abuse and what the law calls unjust enrichment. Your wife and mother-in-law have been unjustly enriched at your expense under fraudulent pretenses for the better part of a decade." Hearing his reality, affirmed by a legal professional, was profoundly validating. It wasn't just him being sensitive. It was real. "The informal agreement you both signed," she continued, tapping the paper, "while not a deed or a title, is a crucial piece of evidence. It establishes intent. It proves your payments were made with the explicit understanding that you were building equity in a joint investment." Her signature on this document, combined with her handwritten note of your bank account number on a notice addressed solely to her mother, creates a very clear and damning narrative. She leaned forward. "They made a critical mistake, Mr. Collins. They got greedy, and they got sloppy. They put it in writing." "So what can I do?" Andre asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We have two immediate courses of action, Ms." Vance explained, "all business now. First, we stop the bleeding. Today, you will cease all payments immediately. You will open a new bank account at a completely different institution and redirect your direct deposit there. You will close the old account. Do not tell them you are doing this. Let the payment fail. And second, we file a petition in Harris County Court. We will sue both Gloria Sinclair and Rochelle Collins for full reimbursement of the $139,200 you have paid, plus interest and my legal fees. We will attach every single one of these bank statements and this agreement as evidence. We will seek to place a lien against the property for the amount you are owed. This means she cannot sell it or refinance it without paying you first." She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "They counted on you being a quiet, compliant man who would never fight back. We are going to show them just how wrong they were. Your strength is not in shouting, Mr. Collins. It's in your meticulous records and your resolve. We will not be emotional. We will be factual. We will be relentless." Andre felt a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by a sense of purpose so powerful it almost made him dizzy. He had been a victim. Now he was a plaintiff. He had an advocate. He had a plan. "Okay," he said, his voice clear and strong for the first time in weeks. "Let's do it." He wrote her a check for a $5,000 retainer from his modest savings, the most money he'd ever spent at one time outside of a vehicle purchase. As he walked out of the gleaming office tower and back to his dusty work truck, the setting sun glinted off the glass buildings, and for the first time in a long time, Andre felt like he could see his own reflection clearly. The strike was not an act of aggression, but an act of profound and total stillness. It was a cessation, a full stop. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no tearful accusations, no final, explosive fight. Andre's revenge, if it could be called that, would be the sound of silence. It would be the gaping void left by his absence, an absence of money, of labor, of presence. The coordinated action was executed with the quiet precision he normally reserved for calibrating a sensitive thermostat. The very next day was the 31st of the month. The mortgage payment was scheduled to be drafted on the 1st. Following Ms. Vance's instructions to the letter, Andre took his lunch break and drove to a branch of Frost Bank, a Texas-based institution he chose specifically because it had no connection to his old life. In 20 minutes, he had opened a new checking and savings account. He was given a temporary debit card and a stack of starter checks. His next stop was his own company's payroll department. He filled out a new direct deposit form, redirecting his entire bi-weekly paycheck of $2,769 before taxes to his new Frost Bank account. The change would be effective immediately. The final step was the most symbolic. He sat in his truck in the parking lot, pulled out his phone, and logged into his old Chase banking app one last time. He saw the remaining balance, $3,278.45. He saw the pending automatic payment scheduled for the next day. Wells Fargo Home MTG, $1,450. He tapped on the transaction and, with a simple, definitive press of his finger, selected Cancel Payment. A confirmation screen popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment?" He pressed Yes. Then he initiated a transfer of the entire remaining balance to his new Frost Bank account. The app confirmed the transfer would process within 1 business day. Finally, he navigated to the Account Services menu and found the option he was looking for: Close Account. He followed the prompts. Within 60 seconds, a message appeared on the screen. "Your Chase checking account ending in 8432 has been successfully closed." It was done. The financial pipeline that had sustained Gloria and Rochelle's comfortable life for 8 years had been severed. The well was dry. That evening, he went back to the house on Holly Hall Street one last time. The lie about the Katie job had run its course. He walked through the rooms, a silent observer of a life that was no longer his. He saw the big screen TV, the expensive stove, the patio furniture. They were no longer symbols of his contribution, but artifacts of his exploitation. They were just things. Expensive things someone else would now have to figure out how to pay for. He packed a single duffel bag with his remaining work uniforms and toiletries. He left everything else. The clothes in the closet, the books on the nightstand, the electric razor in the bathroom. He was severing ties completely. They could keep the stuff. It was all paid for anyway. As he was about to walk out the door, Rochelle came into the hall. "Oh, you're home early," she said, surprised. "Are you leaving again?" she asked, eyeing the duffel bag. "Yeah," he said, his voice neutral. "Gotta get an early start tomorrow." It was the last lie he would ever tell her. "Okay, well, drive safe," she said, already turning away, her attention drifting back to the television. She didn't ask where he was going. She didn't ask why he had a bag. She just assumed he would be back, that the money would continue to flow, that the world would remain exactly as it was. She had no idea that the ground beneath her feet was already beginning to crumble. Andre walked out the front door and didn't look back. He got into his 2018 Ford F-150, the truck that was almost paid off, his one true asset. He drove away from the little brick bungalow in A-Leaf, the streetlights tracing patterns on his windshield. He didn't feel anger or sadness. He felt a profound, chilling sense of peace. He drove west on the West Park Tollway, the city lights shrinking in his rearview mirror. He checked into a modest extended-stay hotel in the West Chase district, a part of Houston where no one knew him. The room was small and impersonal, with a kitchenette and a lumpy bed. It cost him $350 a week, a price he could easily afford now that he wasn't paying a $1,450 mortgage for someone else. He unpacked his duffel bag, set his father's watch on the nightstand, and sat on the edge of the bed. The room was silent. For the first time in 8 years, the only person his money was supporting was himself. The strike was complete. Now he just had to wait for the fallout. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that it was coming. They had underestimated him. They had mistaken his quiet nature for weakness. They were about to learn that the most dangerous man is the one who has nothing left to lose. The silence from his end was the loudest sound they had ever heard. The first ripple of their collapsing world arrived via text message 4 days later, on the 5th of the month. It was from Rochelle. 11:15 a.m. Hey, the mortgage payment bounced. Wells Fargo sent an email. Weird. Did you change something with the account? Andre read the message and set his phone down. He did not reply. The message was casual, annoyed, but not yet panicked. She assumed it was a simple mistake, a technical glitch he needed to fix. The thought that he might have done it deliberately had not yet entered her mind. The next day, the 6th of the month, his phone rang. It was Rochelle. He watched her name flash on the screen, then let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. He listened to it, his face impassive. Andre, call me. The bank called Mama directly. They said the payment was rejected, and now they're charging a $50 late fee. She's really upset. You need to call them and sort this out. Just fix it, okay? Her voice was tight with irritation. The request was a command, not a plea. He was the fixer. It was his job. He deleted the voicemail. The silence stretched on. He went to work, fixed air conditioners, ate his meals alone in his hotel room, and slept more soundly than he had in years. He was unreachable, a ghost. The lack of response began to sow real panic. On the 10th of the month, a new number appeared on his screen. He didn't recognize it, but suspected who it was. He let it go to voicemail. Andre, this is Gloria, the voice said, sharp and imperious. There was no greeting, no preamble. I do not know what kind of childish game you think you are playing, but the mortgage is now 10 days late. This is affecting my credit. You have a responsibility. You signed an agreement. You will call me back immediately and reinstate that payment, or you will regret it. The message was a threat, laced with the absolute certainty of her own authority. She still believed she was in charge. He deleted the voicemail. The true explosion came on the 15th of the month. His phone began ringing incessantly. It was Rochelle. He ignored the first 4 calls. On the 5th, he answered, holding the phone slightly away from his ear. Andre, where are you? She shrieked, her voice hysterical. I've been calling you for days. Are you okay? What is going on? I'm fine, Rochelle, he said, his voice calm and flat. Fine? Nothing is fine? I went to the bank today to see what was wrong with the account. They said you closed it. You closed our joint account. What is going on? Mama is having a complete meltdown. The bank is calling her every single day. It wasn't a joint account, Rochelle, he said, the words falling like chips of ice. My name was the only one on it. Just like your mother's name is the only one on the deed to her house. There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end of the line. He could hear her breath hitch. The game was over. She knew that he knew. What are you talking about? She stammered, her voice suddenly small. I saw the notice, Rochelle. The one you stuck on the fridge. I saw her name as the only borrower, and I saw my account number scribbled on the bottom in your handwriting. The account you were using to pay her bills? Another silence, longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice was a venomous whisper. You went through my mail? It was stuck on the refrigerator I bought, in the kitchen I paid for, in the house I've been funding for 8 years. I didn't have to look far. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I'm not playing games, Rochelle. I'm done. Done? What does that mean, you're done? You can't just be done. We have a life. We have a home. No, Rochelle, he said, and his voice was filled with a finality that chilled her to the bone. You and your mother have a home. You have a mortgage, and from now on, that's your problem, not mine." He hung up the phone. He blocked her number. He blocked Gloria's number. The first part of the consequences cascade had begun. Their comfortable world had just received its first real tremor. The foundations were cracking, and the entire structure was about to come crashing down. The consequences of Andre's silent strike did not arrive like a lightning bolt, but like a slow, creeping flood. The downfall of Rochelle and Gloria was a cascade of failures, each one a direct result of their own actions, now laid bare by the sudden absence of Andre's money. He didn't have to do anything more. He just had to sit back and watch the world they had built on a foundation of his labor and their lies dissolve. The first official blow landed a week after his final chilling phone call with Rochelle. A certified letter arrived at Gloria's bungalow on Holly Hall Street. It was from the law office of Dina Vance. Inside was a formal, multi-page legal petition filed in Harris County Civil Court. It named both Gloria Sinclair and Rochelle Collins as defendants. The petition laid out the case with devastating clarity. 8 years of mortgage payments, totaling $139,200, made by Andre Collins, under the false pretense of a joint investment. It included copies of the informal agreement they had both signed, and 96 pages of bank statements showing the unbroken chain of payments. The petition demanded full reimbursement, plus accrued interest and legal fees, which were already mounting. Most devastatingly, it included a motion to place an equitable lien on the property for the full amount. Gloria, who had always prided herself on her perfect credit and financial prudence, was horrified. A lawsuit. A lien on her house. It was a public declaration of their deceit. She called Rochelle, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and fear. "What is this? What did you tell this man?" "He's suing us for over $140,000. Rochelle, whose own life was spiraling, had no answers. "He knows, Mama. He knows about the house title. He found out everything." Their world, once so secure, began to contract. The immediate problem was the mortgage. The payment for the current month was now almost 30 days past due. With the previous month's missed payment and penalties, they owed Wells Fargo nearly $3,000 just to bring the account current. It was money they simply did not have. Gloria's pension was a fixed $1,900 a month, barely enough for her own expenses, car insurance, and food. Rochelle's take-home pay from her $41,000 a year receptionist job was about $2,600 a month, but that was consumed by her car payment on a $32,000 Acura TLX, her credit card bills, which were substantial after years of treating Andre's income as a supplement, and her own lifestyle. There was no room for a $1,450 mortgage payment. Desperate, Rochelle showed up at Andre's job site, a residential complex in the Heights where his company was doing a major installation. She had found the location by calling his dispatcher and pretending it was an emergency. She saw him by his truck, talking to another tech. She ran over to him, her face streaked with tears. "Andre, please," she begged, her voice loud enough for his co-workers to hear. "You can't do this to us. We're family. You're destroying my mother's life." Andre looked at her, his expression unreadable behind his wraparound sunglasses. He was wearing his work uniform, covered in a light sheen of dust. He looked tired, but strong. "Rochelle," he said, his voice low and even, not wanting to make a scene for his colleagues. "I was never your family. I was your solution to a financial problem. I was the bill payer. I was the man you told to get out of the kitchen." He used their own words, the callback a quiet, devastating blow. "The lawsuit is between you, your mother, and my attorney. Don't come to my job again." He turned his back on her and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the parking lot. The humiliation was a fresh, public wound. The financial situation at the bungalow went from bad to worse. On day 45 of Andre's departure, a new notice arrived from the bank. The account was now officially in default. The amount required to cure the default was $4,420, including an escalating series of fees and penalties. Gloria's once pristine 780 credit score plummeted. She received a notice from her credit card company that her interest rate was being raised to 29.99% due to a significant negative event on her credit report. On day 60, the inevitable happened. Another certified letter arrived, this one with the terrifying heading, Notice of Intent to Foreclose. The bank was no longer asking for the past due amount. They were now threatening to accelerate the loan, meaning the entire remaining balance of approximately $95,000 would become due. To stop the proceedings, they had to pay the full arrears, now over $5,800, within 30 days. Panic set in. Gloria tried to get a personal loan, but with her credit score now in the low 600s and her only income being her pension, she was denied by 3 different banks. Rochelle's credit was even worse, maxed out and carrying high balances. They were trapped. The comfortable house, the beautiful garden, the life of ease. It had all been a mirage, sustained by a man they had disrespected and discarded. The final public humiliation came on day 90. A notice of foreclosure sale was officially posted on the front door of the house at 7418 Holly Hall Street. A representative from the bank taped the legal document in a plastic sleeve right on the front door for all the neighbors to see. The notice stated that the property would be sold at public auction on the steps of the Harris County Courthouse in 1 month's time. The news spread through their church and their social circle like wildfire. The whispers followed them everywhere. Gloria, the proud matriarch, was losing her home. Rochelle, the stylish daughter, was being sued alongside her mother. The shame was suffocating. They had no choice but to vacate the property before the auction. They had to pack up Gloria's life, all the possessions her late husband had left her, all the furniture Andre had paid to move in. They couldn't afford a professional moving service, which would have cost over $2,000. They had to rent a small U-Haul truck for $199 and do it themselves. A grueling, sweaty task that mirrored the work Andre used to do for them, without a second thought. Their new home was a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a sprawling, faceless complex over by the Sam Houston Tollway. The rent was $1,600 a month, an expense that would consume nearly all of Gloria's pension and a huge chunk of Rochelle's salary. The kitchen was tiny, with cheap laminate countertops and a sputtering ancient GE stove. There was no garden, no patio, no space. The Grand Wolf range and the Samsung smart fridge were gone, sold for pennies on the dollar to a used appliance dealer for quick cash. The big-screen Sony TV wouldn't even fit in the new living room. The house on Holly Hall Street, the one Andre had poured $139,200 into, was sold at auction for $155,000. After the bank took its remaining principal of $95,000 and nearly $10,000 in legal fees and penalties, there was about $50,000 left. Thanks to Ms. Vance's lien, that money did not go to Gloria. It was placed in an escrow account, pending the outcome of Andre's lawsuit. The cascade was complete. They had lost the house, their savings, their social standing, and their credit. They had traded a man's love and loyalty for a few years of unearned comfort, and the bill had finally come due. 2 years passed. The chaotic downfall of Rochelle and Gloria faded into the background of Andre's life, becoming a closed chapter in a book he no longer read. The man who had left that Aleph bungalow with nothing but a duffel bag and a broken heart had systematically rebuilt his world, this time on a foundation of solid ground, in his name only. The change in Andre was subtle, but profound. The quietness that Rochelle and Gloria had mistaken for weakness had solidified into a core of unshakable confidence. He poured all the energy he had once spent on their home into his own career. He took advanced certification courses in commercial refrigeration and complex climate control systems. His expertise grew, and so did his reputation. His boss, seeing his renewed drive and skill, promoted him to lead commercial technician. But Andre had bigger plans. He took the initial $20,000 settlement he received from the escrow account after the house sale and, instead of spending it, used it as seed money. He registered an LLC, Collins Climate Control. He bought a second, used work van for $15,000, and outfitted it with $5,000 worth of new equipment. He started taking on his own side jobs on evenings and weekends, building a client list through word of mouth. His work was meticulous, his prices were fair, and he was unfailingly honest. Within a year, he had so much work that he respectfully gave his notice and went into business for himself full-time. He hired 2 young, eager technicians from a local trade school, mentoring them the way his first boss had mentored him. His company thrived. The man who had made $72,000 a year was now clearing close to $150,000 after expenses. With his financial life secure, he turned to his personal life. He had been living in a series of modest rental apartments, saving his money with a singular goal in mind. One sunny Saturday afternoon, he stood with a realtor in front of a house in Oak Forest, a quiet, established neighborhood in northwest Houston. It was a 1,500-square-foot brick ranch, smaller and less grand than Gloria's old house, but it was solid, honest, and well-maintained. It had mature oak trees in the front yard and a small, tidy garden out back. The price was $280,000. With the final settlement from his lawsuit, the court had awarded him an additional $60,000, garnished from Rochelle's wages over time, and his own aggressive savings. He was able to put down a 30% down payment. The day he closed on the house was one of the proudest of his life. He held the keys in his hand, the metal cool and heavy. He walked through the empty rooms, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. He ran his hand along the simple, clean countertops in the kitchen. It had a perfectly functional, brand-new $900 Frigidaire stove. It wasn't a luxury brand, but it was his. The deed was recorded in a single name, Andre Collins. A few months after he moved in, he was in his new kitchen, the heart of his new home. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He was surrounded by the familiar, comforting smells of his father's gumbo. The Holy Trinity sizzled in a pot on his stove. He had all the time and space in the world. No one would ever tell him to get out of this kitchen again. His phone buzzed. It was a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Andre, it's Rochelle. I know you blocked me. I got your number from a cousin. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. Mama is sorry too. We lost everything." He read the message and he felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. It was like reading a news story about strangers. Their apology coming years too late was for their comfort, not his. He had forgiven them long ago, not because they deserved it, but because he deserved peace. Holding on to that bitterness was like drinking poison and waiting for them to die. He had chosen to live. He typed a short, simple reply. "I wish you well, Rochelle." He sent the message and then blocked the number. He turned his attention back to the pot, giving the rich, dark roux a final stir before adding the shrimp. The smell of home, his home, filled the air. He had learned the hardest lesson of his life in that A-leaf bungalow. A home is not the walls you pay for, and family is not a title you are given. A true home is the place where you are respected, where your presence is valued as much as your provision. And true family are the people who build you up, not the ones who treat you as a resource to be drained. As he looked around his quiet, sunlit kitchen, Andre Collins knew he was finally, truly wealthy. He had a home he owned, a business he had built, and a quiet, unshakable peace in his own heart. He was a man who belonged. We tell stories like Andre's not just for the drama, but for the powerful lesson at their core. If this story of quiet strength and earned justice resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Love Beyond Pride. Your support helps us continue to share these important narratives of resilience and hope. What do you think was the most satisfying part of Andre's journey back to himself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one.